Rossi, Sepang 2015. By the time the paddock arrived in Sepang, the tension between Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez had gone from whispers to open war. Rossi wasn't just leading the 2015 World Championship, he was carrying the hopes of millions who wanted to see the Doctor win a historic 10th title, but the cracks had been forming for weeks. Rossi believed Marquez, already out of the title fight, was deliberately slowing him down to help his fellow Spaniard Jorge Lorenzo take the crown. It wasn't just paranoia. During previous races, Marquez made erratic moves, dicing with Rossi aggressively, backing him into traffic and disrupting his rhythm. To Rossi, it was sabotage. But in Sepang, it all boiled over. During the race, the mind games turned into something else. Marquez didn't seem interested in winning. He kept diving past Rossi in unusual places, slowing down mid-corner, braking early, cutting under again, almost like he was toying with him. Every overtake felt exaggerated, every block deliberate. Onboard cameras showed Marquez glancing back repeatedly, checking where Rossi was, not racing him, mocking him. Rossi's body language on the bike said it all. He gestured multiple times mid-lap, shaking his head, waving his hand. He even turned around while cornering, something almost unheard of in modern MotoGP. By lap 7, it was clear. Rossi had had enough. At turn 14, Rossi sat up early. He drifted wide. Marquez followed. The two ran nearly off track. Then it happened. Rossi slowed, looked at Marquez, and Marquez's front wheel clipped Rossi's leg. Marquez hit the ground. The crowd and commentary box erupted. Replay footage lit up every screen in the world. The angles were dissected frame by frame. Did Rossi kick him? Was it a brake check? Did Marquez crash himself trying to intimidate? Race direction deliberated into the night. The ruling came down hard. Rossi was handed 3 penalty points for irresponsible riding, pushing his total to 4. That meant a mandatory back of the grid start at the final round in Valencia. The punishment didn't just change the championship, it changed public perception. Rossi had always walked the line between genius and gamesmanship, but this was different. This time, he hadn't outsmarted Marquez. He had physically forced the issue, and it backfired spectacularly. Rossi would go on to finish 4th in Valencia, clawing through the pack, but Lorenzo won the race and the title. And Rossi, he left 2015 not as the returning king, but as the man who cracked under pressure. He became overnight the villain in the very sport he had once defined. Marquez, Argentina, 2018. Everything about Marquez's 2018 Argentina Grand Prix was chaos. Rain had washed the grid. The race started in disarray. Riders were forced to make last-second decisions on tire changes, but the real mess began with Marquez stalling on the grid just before the warm-up lap. He tried to bump start the bike himself, an unusual but not illegal move. Then, as the rest of the grid moved off, Marquez rode the wrong way back into his grid spot. That was the first red flag. It's a clear violation of safety protocol. Race officials immediately issued a ride-through penalty. He didn't take it calmly. Marquez rejoined the race late and furious. He began cutting through the field with surgical aggression. But this wasn't classic Marquez. This was something unhinged. First, he shoulder-checked Alex Espargaro mid-corner in a move that pushed him wide. Then he came upon Valentino Rossi, and the memory of 2015 hung in the air like static. At turn 13, Marquez lunged inside. It was never going to stick. Rossi had already committed to the corner. Marquez's front tire collided with Rossi's foot peg, forcing Rossi off track and into wet grass. With no grip, Rossi slid out and toppled into the gravel. The crowd roared. The stewards blinked. Marquez was hit with another time penalty, but he kept racing. By the end, he had racked up multiple infractions, including improper bike restart, irresponsible riding, and dangerous overtakes. He crossed the line 5th, but was bumped down to 18th after the penalty. Post-race, Marquez marched to Rossi's garage to offer an apology. Rossi's team physically blocked him at the door. Valentino's reaction in the press conference was icy. He destroyed our sport. He doesn't respect anyone. From that day forward, Marquez was no longer just the golden boy or the ultra-aggressive champion. He was the man who pushed past the line, a villain in the eyes of his fiercest critics. Pedrosa, Estoril, 2006. There was no conflict, no feud, no sabotage. Danny Pedrosa and Nicky Hayden were teammates. One was the rookie, the future of Spanish racing. The other, a hard-working underdog who had fought tooth and nail to reach the top. Repsol Honda had one clear goal: win the world title with Hayden. But at Estoril, Pedrosa made the worst decision of his career. With Hayden leading the championship, he only needed to score solid points in the final 2 races to take the crown. Pedrosa, mathematically out of the fight, wasn't supposed to challenge him, but on lap 5, heading into turn 6, Pedrosa saw an opening. Hayden was ahead. Pedrosa dove up the inside. He lost the front. Both bikes went down. It wasn't a racing incident. accident. It was a rookie mistake with world title consequences. Cameras cut to Hayden sitting in the gravel, helmet still on, gloves off, pounding the ground with both fists. His season, his dream, had just been destroyed by the person least expected to do it, his own teammate. The garage was silent. Pedrosa immediately apologized. He looked broken in post-race interviews, admitting he misjudged the corner and never intended to pass. The paddock believed him, but fans didn't. The backlash was instant and brutal. Pedrosa, once hailed as Spain's next champion, became the man who cost Nicky Hayden everything. Fortunately for Hayden, he salvaged a miracle at the Valencia finale when Rossi crashed and handed the title back. But Pedrosa's Estoril moment stuck for years. To many, he wasn't just the quiet talent anymore. He was the teammate who torpedoed the team. In one afternoon, Dani Pedrosa became a MotoGP villain, not by malice, but by one catastrophic error, and no apology could take that image away. Capirossi, Argentina, 1998. It was supposed to be a clean team battle. Loris Capirossi versus Tetsuya Harada, both riding for Aprilia, both with a shot at the 250cc world title in the final round of the 1998 season. The championship had come down to the last lap of the last race in Argentina. Harada was leading. He'd done everything right, fast, consistent, and smart. Behind him, Capirossi had no answer on pace, but he had something else. They approached the final corner of the final lap. Harada took the textbook line, covering the inside. It was over, unless Capirossi did something insane, and he did. Capirossi came from 2 bike lengths back. He didn't line up a pass. He didn't even try to brake earlier. He rode straight into the back of Harada, sending his teammate and title rival flying off into the gravel. The contact was brutal, intentional, and shocking. Harada tumbled out of the race. Capirossi lost control too, but unlike Harada, he managed to stay upright, pick the bike up, and limp across the finish line. He became the 250cc world champion. The crowd was stunned. Even his own team looked rattled. Harada sat in the gravel trap, motionless, not from injury, but disbelief. His title had just been stolen, not lost. Race Direction issued a post-race penalty to Capirossi, docking him a time position, but not the championship. The backlash was immediate. Riders, commentators, even neutral fans, everyone knew what they'd seen. Capirossi didn't outbrake Harada. He eliminated him. Overnight, Capirossi's image shifted. He wasn't the brave young Italian with fire in his belly anymore. He was the man who drove his bike into a teammate to take the crown. He lifted the trophy, yes, but he didn't win that day. He took it, and everyone knew it. Iannone, 2020 Andrea. Iannone always carried a reputation for being fast, flashy, and just a bit wild. Nicknamed the Maniac for his explosive riding style, he was a fan favorite for years. But in 2020, that name would take on a darker meaning. Late in 2019, during routine anti-doping checks, Iannone tested positive for drostanolone, an anabolic steroid banned under WADA and FIM regulations. The result shocked the paddock. No MotoGP rider in the modern era had ever been suspended for performance-enhancing drugs. At first, Iannone denied everything. He claimed the result came from contaminated meat he ate during a trip to Asia. His legal team submitted evidence, expert testimony, even food samples to support the claim, but the FIM didn't buy it. The initial ban came down. 18 months, meaning he'd miss almost 2 full seasons. He appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, hoping for a reduction. It backfired. After reviewing all the documents, CAS ruled that Iannone had failed to prove innocence and increased the ban to 4 full years, the maximum allowed. In a sport where most riders retire by 35, a 4-year exile is career death. Aprilia terminated his contract. Sponsors dropped him overnight. Fans who once loved his wild energy now saw him as the sport's first convicted cheat. His social media turned from glamour shots and paddock photos to courtroom statements and angry declarations. Iannone still insists he's innocent, but the facts are on paper. The substance was there. The appeals failed. The ruling is final. Overnight, Andrea Iannone didn't just lose a ride. He became the first name in MotoGP's doping history book, and the doors haven't opened for him since. Zarco, Austria 2020. Johann Zarco is known for his elbows out riding and late braking style, but in Austria 2020, that aggressiveness very nearly became a death sentence for someone else. On lap 9 of the Styrian Grand Prix, Zarco was in a high-speed battle with Franco Morbidelli. Coming out of turn 2, as they approached the fastest section of the track, Zarco swung wide and blocked Morbidelli at nearly 300 kilometers per hour. The two made contact. Both riders went down instantly. That would have been enough. 2 riders crashing on the straight is scary, but what happened next sent chills through the paddock. Morbidelli's bike cartwheeled across the grass, flew over the curb at full speed, and shot directly across the apex of turn 3, just as Valentino Rossi and Maverick Viñales were passing through. Morbidelli's bike missed Rossi's head by inches. If it had landed a second earlier, MotoGP would have had a fatality on live television. Zarco's own bike followed seconds later, slicing through the runoff. The replays were terrifying. Riders, crew, and officials stood frozen. The race was red flagged immediately. When the dust settled, the blame started. Riders and team bosses pointed fingers squarely at Zarco. They called the move reckless, unnecessary, borderline suicidal. Rossi, visibly shaken in interviews, said he believed he had narrowly avoided death. Race Direction reviewed the footage and ordered Zarco to start the next race from the pit lane as a punishment for the move. But the damage was done. Zarco, who had been considered a hard but fair racer, was now MotoGP's most hated man, if only for a week. And even now, when fans mention Austria 2020, they don't talk about the winner. They talk about the day two bikes almost killed Rossi, and Zarco's name is always at the center. Biaggi, Germany 2001. Max Biaggi had always been MotoGP's most polarizing figure. Charismatic, stylish, brutally fast, but also proud, temperamental, and notoriously difficult in the garage. Fans either loved him or loathed him. But in 2001, at the German Grand Prix in Sachsenring, he crossed a line he couldn't walk back from. The weekend had been frustrating. Biaggi wasn't getting the setup he wanted on the Yamaha M1, and his championship run was slipping away. After a difficult qualifying session where mechanical issues forced him to pit early, Biaggi returned to the garage boiling with rage. Tensions flared when his chief mechanic gave feedback on the telemetry. Biaggi snapped. In front of stunned engineers, he screamed across the garage, shoved a clipboard off a workbench, and then punched his mechanic in the face. Not a shove, not a heated push, a full-blown closed fist punch. Crew members pulled him away. The mechanic stumbled back, shocked. Team staff stood frozen, unsure what to do. The incident was reported directly to Yamaha's top management. Biaggi wasn't just fined, he was banned from participating in the next official Yamaha test session and issued a formal warning that any repeat offense would result in contract termination. The press got wind of the event almost immediately. Yamaha tried to contain it, but the story leaked. Max Biaggi had assaulted a member of his own team. Fans who once cheered his swagger suddenly saw something darker. Sponsors took notice. Yamaha's inner circle began freezing him out, and for the rest of the 2001 season, Biaggi rode alone, not just on the track, but in the paddock too. The punch wasn't just physical, it shattered the already fragile image of Max Biaggi as a misunderstood genius. That day, he became something else, the villain who couldn't control his own hands. Simoncelli, Le Mans 2011. Marco Simoncelli had everything going for him: explosive speed, fearless riding, and an electric presence that made him a fan favorite. But during the 2011 French Grand Prix at Le Mans, the MotoGP world turned on him in a single lap. Simoncelli had qualified on the front row, and his pace was incredible, but behind him was Danny Pedrosa, smaller, precise, and very much in championship contention. The two fought wheel to wheel for several laps, but everyone watching knew what was coming. Simoncelli wasn't going to wait. On lap 17, heading into the tight hairpin at turn 6, Simoncelli launched a pass. It was late, it was wide, and it was too much. As he dove up the inside, Pedrosa committed to the corner. Their bikes touched. Simoncelli's front tire clipped Pedrosa's rear, sending the Spaniard airborne and crashing to the ground. Pedrosa fractured his collarbone. Race Direction immediately hit Simoncelli with a ride-through penalty for dangerous riding, but the punishment wasn't enough to stop the media explosion. Riders lined up post-race to call out Simoncelli for being reckless, unteachable, and too aggressive to be in MotoGP. Jorge Lorenzo, a frequent critic, said, "We all saw this coming. Fans online turned brutally fast. The same people who loved Simoncelli's hair, humor, and fearless style were now labeling him a hazard, a loose cannon who would get someone killed." Simoncelli, visibly shaken, stood by his move in interview. He said Pedrosa hadn't left him room, that he wasn't going to back out, but even his confidence couldn't erase the shift in the paddock. In a single afternoon, Marco Simoncelli went from being MotoGP's rising star to its most controversial figure, and though his redemption arc came tragically late at Le Mans, he wore the villain mask. Lorenzo, Valencia 2015. Jorge Lorenzo won the 2015 MotoGP World Championship fair and square on paper, but for millions of fans around the world, especially the fiercely loyal Rossi supporters, he didn't win the title. He took it in a cloud of controversy. After the infamous Rossi-Marquez clash in Sepang, Rossi was forced to start the final round in Valencia from the back of the grid. Lorenzo, meanwhile, was on pole, in prime position to snatch the title if he won, and Rossi failed to make the podium. What unfolded looked clean. Lorenzo got the start, led every lap, and crossed the line line in P1. Danny Pedrosa and Marc Marquez, both behind him, never launched a serious attack, despite clearly having the pace to do so. The conspiracy theories began immediately. Fans claimed Marquez had blocked Rossi all season and now wasn't challenging Lorenzo to ensure the title stayed Spanish. When asked about it, Lorenzo smirked. He thanked Marquez and Pedrosa in Parc Ferme. Rossi himself called it a disgrace to the sport, but what flipped the fan base wasn't the race. It was Lorenzo's response. Instead of showing restraint or acknowledging the controversy, Lorenzo doubled down. In press conferences, he defended race direction's penalty against Rossi. He praised Marquez's riding. He dismissed Rossi's accusations as excuses. And then, while lifting the championship trophy, he raised his finger to his lips in a silencing the crowd gesture, while tens of thousands of fans booed from the stand. He had won the championship, but he had lost the room. Overnight, Jorge Lorenzo went from world champion to pantomime villain, not for cheating, not for crashing anyone out, but for how he handled a title that came gift-wrapped in drama. The sport had crowned him. The fans had already buried him.